The greatest betrayal in history didn't happen on a battlefield. It happened at a press conference. When the US president uttered that sentence, "Europe's wars are no longer our wars," blood ran cold in Brussels, Berlin, and Warsaw. And that night, when the phones started ringing, no one at the White House picked up. In the press room in Washington, cameras are rolling, flashes are popping, but nobody's breathing. The president stands at the podium, arms spread wide, like Jesus Christ or something. But Jesus forgave. This bastard's cursing. 75 years we carried it on our backs, paid their bills, spilled our blood, fought their shitty wars. It's over. A reporter stands up, handshaking. "Mr. President, does this mean the end of Article 5? The man grins. Actually grins. Article 5? A piece of paper. We win wars, not papers. But we're done drowning in Europe shit. At the Pentagon, a general punches his television. Screen cracks, glass cuts his face, but he doesn't even feel it. At NATO headquarters, phones are ringing off the hook. Nobody knows what to say. The 82nd Airborne in Poland gets an emergency code, but no orders. Soldiers look at each other. They don't know where to go, because they don't have a place anymore. In Berlin, at the Chancellery building, shouting breaks out. German, French, English curses all mixing together. A minister throws a bottle at the wall, glass scattering everywhere. The Chancellor's locked in his office, head in his hands. Outside, the press is waiting, but inside, Europe's thrashing like it's coughing up blood. In London, the Prime Minister stands in the middle of the office, whiskey in hand, staring at the wall. His advisor asks, "Prime Minister, what do we do?" No answer, just silence. And what he sees at the bottom of that whiskey, annihilation. In Paris, at the Élysée Palace, emergency meeting, generals, ministers, everyone screaming. Someone says, "We have nuclear weapons. We have deterrence." From across the table, someone laughs, but it's a bitter laugh. Russia has 6,000 warheads. We have 290. If you can do math, calculate the result yourself. The room freezes. In Spain, the streets are burning. In Madrid, protesters are shouting, "American dogs." But that same evening in Barcelona, supermarkets are being looted, because people know, if NATO ends, security ends. If security ends, society collapses. Simple. The Baltic states are going insane. Estonia's prime minister is on television, voice trembling. "Stay calm. The EU is with us." But the EU isn't an army. The EU is bureaucracy. It signs papers. It doesn't stop tanks. In Lithuania, a woman opens her laptop, goes to Russian news sites. What she reads, "The US has betrayed. Now it's our turn." Comments flowing. Russian trolls celebrating. But the worst part is, some comments are real. Russian people genuinely cheering. In Stockholm, Sweden's defense minister goes on television. "We're ready." But the moment the camera cuts, he starts writing his resignation letter. Finland declares mobilization. Siren tests are conducted. People running to shelters. Some never come out. In Rome, the Italian parliament erupts in a brawl. One MP shouting, "We must talk to Russia." Another, "That's treason," fists flying. TV broadcast cuts out, but it's too late. Everyone's seen it. In Paris, the Champs-Élysées is overflowing. 200,000 people in the streets. American flags burning. NATO logos trampled underfoot. Police firing gas. People scattering. A photographer capturing it. Burning flag. Behind it, a young woman in tears. The photo spreads worldwide. They're calling it the Great Betrayal. But the real horror is in the morning papers. Moscow. US withdraws from NATO. Europe defenseless. Putin gives a speech. Short, cold, sharp. "We're always ready for dialogue with our neighbors. We can build a new security system." Right after that sentence, Russian units on the western border start moving. Official statement. Routine exercises. Nobody's buying that lie. In Ukraine, Zelensky speaks. Tired, exhausted, furious. We've been abandoned, but we're used to fighting alone. This time is different, though. The US, quote, cuts off weapons aid. Intelligence sharing stops. Ukraine becomes a lonely island overnight. In Warsaw, a man loads his family into a car, drives toward the German border, runs out of gas on the road, abandons the car, they walk, like thousands of others. The exodus begins. At the White House, the phones go silent. The president's sleeping in his bed. Outside, protesters are shouting with NATO flags, but he doesn't want to hear it. Maybe he genuinely doesn't. At the Pentagon, the Secretary of Defense resigns. Nobody replaces him. The Secretary of State resigns too. The cabinet's falling apart. Someone on TV is shouting, "This is a coup, a legal coup." Nobody cares. Because history's being written. And history doesn't look at law, it looks at power. At midnight, NATO headquarters in Brussels empties out. American officers packing their belongings, boarding planes. A colonel turns back one last time. The NATO flag's still hanging straight, but it's not moving. There's not even wind. That night, millions of people across Europe stay awake, looking out their windows at the sky, waiting for thunder, an explosion, something. Nothing comes. Worse is coming. 3 days pass. 3 goddamn days. Diplomats holding meetings, leaders arranging phone calls, press conferences being held. Everyone waiting for a miracle. No miracle comes. Tanks come. 4th morning, in Narva, that shitty border town in eastern Estonia, Russian tanks start moving. Again, they say, exercises. But this time they're not turning back. They cross the bridge, enter Estonian territory. NATO's Article 5 is invoked. Estonia's president sends a message. We are under attack. We call all allies to duty. In Brussels, the NATO Council convenes. But one chair at the table sits empty. A week ago, an American general sat there. Now there's just emptiness. The German representative speaks. Technically, Article 5 is still valid. The US just said they won't enforce. The Polish representative slams his fist on the table. Technically, tanks are heading to Tallinn and you're talking technicalities. The French representative. We can intervene. French forces are ready. But we can't go in alone. The Italian representative shakes his head. The government fell. Early elections. No military authority. The Spanish representative spreads his hands. People in the streets. Government building under siege. Impossible. Silence. In that silence, in Tallinn, a mother locks her children in the basement. Outside, engine sounds, tank treads scraping asphalt. The door lock won't do shit. But what else can she do? In Riga, Latvia's army mobilizes. 6,000 soldiers, facing them. Russia's western military district, 200,000 strong. The math is simple. Massacre. In Vilnius, Lithuania's prime minister addresses the nation. We resist to the end. But when the camera cuts, he's crying. Studio workers hear it. Nobody says anything. Poland declares full mobilization. Reserves called up. Streets swarming with soldiers. But no weapons. No ammunition. F-35 seconds from the US cancelled. Patriot systems withdrawn. Poland's army is brave, but naked. In Warsaw, a general gives an order. Withdraw to the eastern border. But with what weapons? Soldiers looking at maps. On the map, everything looks fine. In reality, there's just soil, ready to drink blood. In Berlin, the German parliament votes. Issue: military intervention in Eastern Europe. Result: rejected. Reason: public opinion not ready. German people are in the streets, but not angry about war, angry about prices. The euro's collapsed. lost 40% against the dollar in 3 days. Inflation exploded. Fights breaking out in supermarkets. A woman stabbed at the cheese counter. Reason: last piece of cheddar. In Paris, the new president, whoever came in, addresses the nation. France is strong. We have nuclear deterrence. Russia responds. They launch a missile. Orbital. Detonates in international waters. A warning. If you have nukes, so do we, and a lot more. Silence. In London, the British Parliament descends into chaos. One group: let's follow the US. Europe's wars aren't our wars. Other group: betrayal. Betrayal of history. A punch is thrown. The speaker passes out. TV broadcast cuts, but the internet didn't. The world's watching. The British Parliament brawling on the floor. In Stockholm, Sweden declares a state of emergency. All men called to arms, but the depots are empty because weapons came from NATO. No access to NATO stockpiles anymore. In Helsinki, Finland makes a secret decision. Talk to Moscow. Not official. Secret. An intelligence officer crosses the Russian border, goes to Moscow, waits in an office. The man facing him is cold. Declare neutrality. Leave NATO. We won't mass troops at your border. The Finnish man swallows. The Baltics? The Russian's face is expressionless. They're our problem. The man returns to Helsinki. Gives his report. Cabinet convenes. Vote taken. Result: Finland leaves NATO. They joined 8 months ago. Now they're leaving. Norway stays silent. Switzerland reminds everyone it's already neutral. Austria too. In Brussels, the EU Council meets. Hungary raises its hand. We must make a deal with Russia. Diplomacy, not war. The Polish representative jumps up. You weren't already licking Russia's boots. Now you're officially switching sides. A fight breaks out. The chamber empties. The EU dies that day. Nobody announces it. But everyone knows. In Amsterdam, hospitals are overwhelmed. Heart attack cases tripled. Stroke cases doubled. Panic attacks. Suicides. People jumping off bridges. Over-the-counter antidepressants being sold. Police can't keep up. In Madrid, a father shoots his son. Reason: bread. Didn't want to share the stockpile. Courts full. Prisons overflowing. Police going home. Not getting paid anyway. In Rome, the Vatican goes silent. The Pope doesn't speak. The church is quiet. People are praying, but no answer comes. 9th day, Tallinn falls. Estonia's government flees to London. They declare a government in exile. Nobody recognizes it. Riga falls on the 11th day. Latvian resistance crushed. 2,000 soldiers dead. Russians hang their flag on Riga Cathedral. Photo served to world press. Vilnius falls on the 13th day. Lithuania's president commits suicide. Leaves a note. Europe abandoned us. May God forgive. At the Polish border, Russian tanks stop. They don't cross. Not yet, but they're there. Waiting. In Berlin, Paris, London, Rome, people aren't going outside anymore. They sit in their homes. TV's on, but nobody watching. They don't want to see. At the White House, the president gives an interview. Reporter asks, "The Baltics have fallen. Do you regret it?" The president smiles. The Baltics weren't our war. Nobody's wars are ours anymore. That night, something breaks in Europe. The soul breaks. Faith breaks. Civilization breaks. 6 months later, the map's been redrawn. Nobody calls this war. They call it restructuring, security architecture, bullshit words, the truth. Europe's been torn apart, put back together, but this time Moscow's doing the gluing. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania don't exist anymore. I mean, they're on the map, but only as names. They've become autonomous republics within the Russian Federation. The autonomous part's a lie. The Republic part too. In Tallinn, Russian soldiers patrol. Estonians walk, looking down. Street signs translated to Russian. No one objects. Those who objected disappeared. Families not informed. Morgues filled up, then emptied. Nobody asked where they went. In Riga, a new monument was erected. Instead of the Freedom Monument, there's now the Unity Victory Monument. Latvians didn't come to the ceremony. Russians didn't even care. Monuments are erected for history anyway, not for viewers. And history's already written with lies. In Vilnius, the old presidential palace became a museum. There's an exhibit called The Mistake of Independence, 1990, 1 to 2026. School children are taken on tours, guide explaining, "This period was marked by Western deception. Russia saved us." Children listening, believing. That's how the new generation grows up. Poland still standing, but half dead. Constant tension at the eastern border. Russian units waiting there. Polish army across from them. Sometimes shots fired. Sometimes bodies come, but no official war. They call it border clashes. Funerals buried in secret. Warsaw's streets are tense. People stockpiling. Every week, supermarkets empty out. Government says, everything's fine. Nobody's buying it. Tanks standing in the streets. For security purposes, they say. Security. Whose security? In Berlin, Germany started a new era. They call it Pragmatic Peace Policy. They've made a deal with Russia. Natural gas flowing again. Nord Stream 3 under construction. Economy recovering. Conscience died, but wallets filled. On German streets, protests still happening. People shouting, "Betrayal," police breaking them up, firing gas, making arrests. Public order, they say. Germany had forgotten fascism. Now it's remembering. In Paris, France has created the independent European defense bloc. Spain, Italy, Belgium joined. Looks strong on paper. In reality, a joke. Russia does a maneuver. The bloc goes quiet. Russia issues a warning. The bloc apologizes. This isn't a bloc. It's trembling. In London, Britain's alone. Again. They did Brexit. Now they're living NATO exit. Prime Minister talks about special relationship with the US. The US isn't picking up. The relationship ended long ago anyway. The British look out at the Atlantic. They used to see Allied ships. Now just waves. No fleet. Just memory. In Stockholm, Sweden's surrendered. Not officially. In practice. Signed a security agreement with Russia. Article: No NATO bases on Swedish soil. No NATO exercises. Russian Navy moves freely in the Baltic. Swedes are ashamed. But they're alive. Sometimes survival matters more than honor. Sometimes, in Helsinki, Finland's return to neutrality. Received a thank you letter from the Kremlin. Finland's president burned the letter, but signed it. Norway, left alone, withdrew from NATO. Selling oil, getting rich, staying quiet, sold their conscience for oil prices. Denmark offered to sell Greenland to the US. The US refused. We don't need foreign territory anymore. We're looking inward. Denmark stuck with Greenland, like a hot potato, then considered selling to China. Just considered. Hungary, Serbia, Bulgaria created the Eastern Partnership bloc with Russia. Didn't leave the EU, need the money, but forgot NATO, building Russian military bases with EU funds. Absurd. No. The new normal. Greece, Cyprus gave bases to Russia. The Mediterranean's now a Russian sea. NATO fleet withdrew from the Mediterranean. Italian, Spanish bases emptied. American flags lowered. New flags raised. Turkey always played differently anyway. Hasn't officially joined the Russian bloc, but now laughs at the US. Incirlik base closed. American nuclear weapons removed. Russia said, thanks. Turkey said, no problem. The Middle East shattered. Israel left alone. US support cut. Iran attacked. Israel issued nuclear warning. UN convened. Did jack shit. War started. Nobody intervened. Then it ended. Nobody knows how, but Israel's smaller on the map now. In the Far East, Taiwan fell. China invaded. The US condemned, just condemned, didn't send troops. Taiwanese people resisted. China crushed them. The world watched, said so tragic. That's all. Japan armed up. South Korea armed up. Everyone's making nuclear weapons now. No American umbrella. Everyone building their own umbrella. But these aren't umbrellas. They're bombs. Africa's burning. But it always was. Nobody noticed. South America descended into chaos. Coups, wars, gangs. The US isn't intervening. Monroe Doctrine thrown in the trash. The Americas for Americans, no longer valid. The Americas belong to whoever's strong. At the White House, new elections happened. Old president won. Again. People didn't react. Doesn't matter who they vote for anyway. Same result. Turning inward. Not America first. America only. New York Times headline. World order collapsed. New order. Chaos. Washington Post wrote, Pax Americana dead. 1945 to 2026. But no peace. Nobody's resting in peace. 6 more months passed. A year gone. People adapted. Strange thing is, people can adapt to anything. To death, destruction, betrayal, darkness. They adapt and keep living. In the Baltics, the new generation speaks Russian. At the Polish border, tank rumble continues. Germany's getting rich, but losing its soul. France tries to preserve its pride, but looks ridiculous. Britain alone, and forgotten. Turkey's getting stronger. Russia's building an empire. China's swallowing the world. The US sits at home. One day, someone looks at a history book and asks, how did this happen? The answer's obvious. It happened at a press conference. Started with one sentence. With one betrayal. The world was never the same again. The old NATO headquarters in Brussels is now a tourist site. Guides run tours. This used to be the building that protected the world, but in 2026, they don't finish the sentence. No need anyway. Visitors look at the flagpole, empty. Wind blowing, no flag. There, beneath that empty pole, a small plaque. NATO 1940, 9 to 2026. Founded to preserve peace. Fell victim to betrayal. Tourists take photos, then leave. Life goes on, but that plaque will stay there, forever, to remind of humanity's greatest betrayal.